Connecting audio.
The
Calibrating
drama
buffering.
has. There he is!
There he
The
is!
one, the
Oh, good
only!
evening.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome a true Renaissance man, David Deutscher. He has credits on IMDb as a movie producer. He is currently in school studying for a master's in cybersecurity, and he's writing a book. Welcome to the program today, David Deutscher.
Thank you guys so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. True honor.
We're very excited to have you. So,
Yeah, after the first episode, I'm really excited to be a guest on the second one. So I'm just I'm in astonishment that I made the cut. So yeah.
Thank you. That's high praise. So we hear you're writing a book. Had you started writing this book before the pandemic, or has the pandemic been the impetus for writing a book?
So actually, the pandemic was really the impetus. So I'm a student of history, and I love reading about American history, world history, military history in general. And I always notice that there are so many overlooked parts of history that nobody really cares about. Uncle John's Bathroom Readers usually had a section called the dustbin of history about things that people just forgot about. And that's something that I, when I write a book, want to focus on. It's about wars over nothing, essentially. It's about conflicts that usually started with nothing and ended with nothing, or eventually down the line led to a major conflict, but it was, again, all about nothing. It's a very Seinfeldian way of looking at life.
So this book is a work of nonfiction?
Correct.
Were any of the wars decided by rock, paper, scissors?
Not that my research has shown, but if there is, I will find it.
if only you were there at the time.
Would you like to share an example of one of these wars that was fought over nothing?
I would be so happy to. There is a war called the Pig War. It's also called the Pig and Potato War. And it is over a few islands between the state of Washington and Canada. And it was a conflict between Great Britain, which owned Canada at the time, and the state of America, because a pig, by mistake, went into the American side of the border and started eating potatoes. And the farmer who found it shot the pig because he was very annoyed about it. And the owner of the pig was an Irishman who worked for the Hudson Bay Company in Canada, and he would not take any money for it. And eventually the conflict escalated where it became a war, which is documented. Thank God there were no major deaths that are recorded, but this really happened. It was a pig and potatoes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I was gonna ask if there's one where it was like a misconception, or not even misconception. It literally was over nothing, and just so much death and slaughter.
There is something similar. There's something called the War of the Oaken Bucket, which was a war between two Italian city-states. And it was basically over a bucket. There's more details to it, but an inanimate object caused havoc. And it's pretty impressive to see how far that can go.
Oh, man.
Was there a time period where these wars were more plentiful, or was it throughout like a few hundred years?
Just throughout the past few hundred years, usually some kind of sentiment like nationalistic sentiment or religious sentiment boiled over, and eventually some kind of nonsense helped propagate everything going further.
Truly fascinating. Once again, this is the Pocket at Ocho podcast. We're joined by David Deutscher, who's discussing the most obscure wars in the history of mankind, and the book he's writing on said topic. Back to the Pig and Potato War. How long did it actually last? Are you familiar with that?
It was pretty brief. It was during the 1800s, and because it was a war between the United States and Great Britain, well, Canada at the time, it didn't really go too far.
Interesting. How do you find out how do you find out stuff about these wars?
One of the beautiful things about history is that there is some kind of chronicle that documents these things, whether it's a church edict, whether it's a newspaper, and once a printing press was involved, there's always something written down. So there's a lot of resources out there. You just have to know where to look.
Fascinating. We want to definitely have you back on the podcast on a later date to continue discussing some of the obscure wars and the progress
Absolutely.
you're making in writing this book. I could also see this as a TV. I could see this as a Strange but True TV series as well, where you discuss the absurdness of these battles.
I would love to talk about this. It's just so interesting to see that it all happened to everyone. It's not necessarily related to North America or Europe. It's a worldwide phenomenon. Something just gets out of control, and once the snowball's rolling, it just gets bigger and bigger till it can crush someone.
I've got a question. Have you seen, obviously history repeats itself. Have you seen anything in the modern age that kind of echoes this?
Nothing that comes to mind on the scale that I've seen. I mean, today a big thing, if somebody has a diplomatic incident, it usually is recovered quite quickly.
Even if it's a pig?
Even if it's a pig or a tweet, usually there is some recovery and it's done very quickly. But back then, when communication was not exactly quick, so it was very difficult. History has shown many times where there would be a war that was ended with an agreement, yet there were some battles still fought because they just didn't get noticed that the war was over. That has happened a few times.
Very true, very true. Modern day communication has changed the history of wars,
Modern day communication is so weird. Anywho.
Look at us. We're all three of us talking online,
at the same time. Yeah.
Doing a TV show from the comfort of our own homes,
It's amazing. I didn't even know my fax machine had video access, so this is pretty cool for me.
I've been afraid to look at my fax machine. It might tell me I was fired. Otherwise, but...
So, should we ask about the information security stuff? Because I'm very curious.
So David Deutscher, as we said, is a true Renaissance man. He's in school. So first off, the whole topic of school, where you can't actually go to school, is an interesting topic. But he's studying for his master's in cybersecurity. So why don't you address both of those issues right now?
Absolutely. So I'm more than halfway through my master's
already?
in cybersecurity. Yes.
How long is this degree or whatever?
The way I planned it, it was going to be 4 semesters, including summer.
Oh wow, that's quick, isn't it?
Yeah, but the course load's heavy, so it's more courses, but in a shorter amount of time.
That's so exciting. Yeah. So proceed. I don't know if I cut you off.
One thing that I really enjoy about the program, and specifically cybersecurity, is just the amount of knowledge that there is today for it. 10 years ago, there was not even close to what they have now. At the same time, though, similar to technology in general, as much as there's good that is upgraded, there's also bad. So as the bad guys get more advanced, but so do the good guys, and it just keeps going up. One particular part of it that I really enjoy is just seeing how connected the world is. Historically, if an army wanted to invade a country, you have to get to the border, you have to have a supply line, you have to have weapons. Today, a cyber attack takes little to no effort compared to what it would take, and it can cripple a country.
All you gotta do is make an app where teenagers dance to songs and skimpy outfits. I'm talking about TikTok in China. That's all.
I was running in the park earlier, and Central Park, and I saw a few teenage girls doing some kind of dance, and one of their friends was filming it. And I can't remember looking ever that stupid when I was younger.
I'm not knocking TikTok. It's actually, if you actually loaded up TikTok, it is a really good app. It really is. But it's like you said, you're like, when you look back, you're like, I would have never done it. You would, and I would have probably too, and I would have hated myself for it. But yeah,
that is probably true. Yeah. So hindsight is 20/20, but at the same time, I was young and dumb, much like most people.
Yep.
I'm still young and dumb, so hey, but back to the school aspect. Speaking of young and dumb, back to the school aspect. How is it never seeing professors while taking classes?
Well, it's live, and I'm doing it over Zoom, but it is strange to go from a classroom setting, which is where we started, to online. in a sense, it's a little less interactive, but at the same time, you're still able to have most functions done. I would compare it actually to if somebody says a joke through text message versus saying it in person. You still could have some of the same nuance, not 100%, but majority of it, and you could still get your point across. I compare the same thing to a class in person or a class over Zoom. Some of the nuance may be lost, but the points are still there. And there are a lot of features on Zoom that actually specifically made for classes. For example, you can raise your hands. One of my professors loves giving polls to hear our ideas, and we analyze the result. Be like, okay, 50-50. Who thinks about this issue, A or B? So Zoom definitely has made things a lot easier. I'm sure they keep adding more features so they can enhance this.
Interesting. Are you actually able to give? Are there tests being given over Zoom?
No, most of the tests that I have are take home, but it's not super easy where it's open book, and it's very different. It's more a sense of I have to do some kind of investigation, and it can take many hours.
Do you feel the same sense of camaraderie with your classmates not being able to see them in person?
Yes, I do. We still have study groups. We still speak over all the time, whether calling each other or texting
IRC.
each other. Right.
BBS, IRC. I used to actually, I have a little bit of experience in that information security culture, at least, if not the field. And my main, I had one more question, which was basically, how the heck did you end up in it? Like you said, like 4 years ago is completely different, right? I've been going to the conventions for years and years. So like, how did you one day be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to learn to be a hacker.
So my career actually started, I worked in operations for a few years. Feels like many years, but it was a few years. And I also worked in sales in a technology field. And I saw the need for security. It was really growing, and it's something that is needed. Especially during the pandemic, there are things that you need, and there are things that it would be nice to have. So I made the jump from sales, which was my last full-time position, to doing this master's full-time, and also taking some certifications along the way, which I'm studying for also alongside school.
Yeah. So
very fascinating stuff. Once again,
Yeah.
This is the Pocket at Ocho podcast. We're joined by David Deutscher, a true Renaissance man. So back to the school thing. Is summer intern still a thing? Is summer intern still a thing, or has that kind of been eliminated due to the pandemic?
So a lot of the companies that I applied to sent very nicely worded emails saying, thank you for your application, but we are stopping everything. We are not taking any interns this summer. I understand it from their standpoint. They're probably in disaster recovery mode. They're trying to figure out what to do. So now I've been applying to virtual internships. I haven't heard back yet. My classmates have been doing the same. We share resources.
I mean, I sent you a referral. I mean, like job hunting has always been the worst, no matter what. And I feel like the personal referrals should hopefully work. I'm just saying that for myself. I hope it works for me. But yeah, let's talk after.
Yeah, absolutely. I always enjoy talking to you also.
Well, it's one-sided.
And yet you still chose him to have a guest on the podcast.
I love Deutscher. He's the best.
Speaking of being the best, we're going to switch topics up a little bit, and now it's time for the Bachelor game. That is David Deutscher.
Oh boy, a Bachelor game? This is
No, we're just kidding around. We're just kidding around. This Renaissance man is available, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be dating during a pandemic where you can't actually see the people you're dating. This is a question that's being asked a ton by married people. What's it like to be dating? Are single people actually dating? And David Deutscher has a little experience in that.
Yes, I do. So when the pandemic first came out, I received from a friend an email about this dating service that two girls based in New York City were starting. And when you open it up, you fill out a form and you're very specific. What are you looking for? What are you into? what age are you? And they ask like very good questions. They didn't just say, what movies do you like, and give 3 examples. They actually asked, what are books you enjoy? How do you usually spend your afternoons? They actually went into very great detail, which I appreciated. So when I
So
did
it sounded
that,
promising. It sounded promising.
yeah, yes. And then in the beginning of it, I actually had, in the first week that I finished my application, I had, I think, 12 Zoom dates with different people altogether.
Wait, wait. I'm sorry. I spaced out 12? 12 Zoom
Yeah,
dates?
I had three. I had 3 a night, basically.
What?
Yes, yes.
You really?
So,
Oh my! Are you tired? Do you need help?
it wasn't bad. I had a gimmick, which I hope no one else copied. I wore my tuxedo. I usually wear for weddings, and when people called me, they're in pajamas, and I'm said like, "Oh hey, yeah, apparently the wedding's called off, so let's talk." And most of them appreciated it. They thought it was funny, so that's usually good. If you want to listen to laugh within the first 30 seconds, I tell you from my stand-up experience, that's usually a good thing.
Plus, you could prove you still fit into your tuxedo, so you could prove you haven't gained any weight during this pandemic. You know, another plus.
That is definitely a good
Yeah,
freaking thing.
yeah. The Kevlar corset was definitely a good investment. And yeah, it's just interesting. Most of the girls that I met with live in New York City and the surrounding area, because that's why I filled out on the application. And it's interesting just to see the diversity. Everyone had different jobs, different roles, different backgrounds.
Different Zoom backgrounds.
Yeah, that's true. Some of them had the back of their couch. Some of them had the back of their bed. Some of them had their parents' basements.
Like, yeah, that happens in most dating. Well, not the Zoom backgrounds thing, but like the different backgrounds, obviously. Oh wait, you're actually saying in their. No, you're saying they come from different backgrounds. But like, what's the difference in the Zoom dating between the Zoom dating and real life dating, right? Like, what have you seen that would be interesting to share? Or is it literally the same?
I personally felt there was a lot less pressure.
Really?
Somebody who, if you're at home, your shoes are off, you're drinking a glass of wine, you're on your couch, and you're just talking to someone on a camera for the program said we should do 15 minutes on average.
Yeah.
It's so much less pressure, and people are much more relaxed with that, as opposed to going to a bar, getting dressed up. Exactly. You have to buy a drink. I had a glass of wine next to me for each one,
there
so
you
I could
go.
match them.
But who paid?
It was we split. We were feeling new age, so I paid for mine. They paid for theirs. So
it's very, very new age. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't tell my parents about that.
I'll try.
And yeah, no, it was pretty pleasant overall. I heard some interesting stories from people. One that stands out to me.
Okay.
So I don't want to say her name, but so she worked for a political radio station. I forgot where it was based, and she didn't have the same views as the radio station that she worked for. So
Cool.
A lot of times politicians, governors, even ambassadors would come in, and everyone in the office would want to take pictures with them and shake their hand, and then they would ask her, and she said, I'm okay, that's not necessary. And then of course when the guest heard that, then the pressure was on. I said, no, what do you mean? I'll take time to take a picture with you. So it got interesting at that point. Personally enjoyed that. And then another date that I had, one of the girls worked in a zoo. So I had to ask her, I said, how are animals, how do they feel about everything that's going on? And she actually said they're actually very calm. They don't feel any pressure. They're doing the regular routine.
Pressure? They're animals.
Yeah, but they're not people around. Their environment has changed.
Right, but they're not used to having people. Well, I mean, they're used to having people around, but like, they live in the wild typically. Do they need people?
I think so. She worked for a local zoo, which wasn't that big, so I guess the animals didn't care. But I read a Wall Street Journal article recently where in zoos they are having people and walk by and workers enacting some sounds because they want, for example, I think it was a penguins. They want them
Interesting.
to know that there's still people watching them, and all that training that they did
I
won't
just didn't
be
know
for
that
naught.
was like, I figure some animals are introverts, right? Like, why is he staring at me? I'm not wearing any pants. Like,
Maybe we should get somebody who works in a zoo on a future episode of the Pocket at
I
Ocho
think we can work
podcast.
on that. I think we can work on that.
That would be fantastic.
And
Yes.
I guess the big question, and you don't have to answer this, but you're going to, is were you wearing pants? I know you're wearing a tuxedo, but were you wearing pants?
The truth is, I was not. I was wearing shorts.
There you go. There
Was
you
it a
go.
matching? Was it matching the top tuxedo top?
Unfortunately, not. One of my biggest regrets for 2020.
Well, if this virus play continues, you may get another chance at a Zoom dating to to dress appropriately for the future. Which, before we let you go, as we thank you for joining us today, Mr. Deutscher. So we've been wondering, do you have any tips for us if coronavirus lockdowns continue longer, if the lockdown comes back in a few months?
Yes. Have essentials, toilet paper, even if you have to fight tooth and nail for it. And one of the biggest things that I found was comforting is having daily social interactions, even for 5 minutes. It is crucial that you see someone else's face and you speak to them, even just checking in, and it makes a world of difference because as people, we need to see other people, and even brief encounters make a world of difference to you and to anybody else that you're reaching out to. So I found that is important, and as a result, and for that, also have a good internet connection so you can do that.
This is true. We also learned today that even if you're an animal, it's important to reach out and socialize for 5 minutes a day.
Absolutely, very important. And if you want to try to do both, there are live cams for different zoos where you
That's
can
true.
see penguins and giraffes. I watched San Diego Zoo had a butterfly live cam, and it was beautiful. It was really actually it was very pretty, and I had it in the background while writing a paper about encryption. So that was fun.
Hells yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We hope to have you back on to hear progress on the book and continued
Yes.
adventures at school. Good luck on all your endeavors, Mr. Deutscher. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great evening.
Have a great evening.
He was a fun guest.
I like that guy. This is typically in every